That's my story, and I'm not changing.
I love it. I love it.
You've been 39 how many times now?
I've been 39 for a long time. Rosalind, congratulations. I saw where you had completed the OMA already and gotten your score back. Great
Thank
job.
you. Thank you.
Great job.
Girl, you be working my face.
I tell you, Rosalind is the star of the show this summer. She's
Telling you.
wearing it out.
Yeah, Dr. Lamb, I had one that completed. She finished hers and did well
Right.
in the C12 class.
That's awesome.
That's good.
A lot of work.
And I've got a lot of them that are sitting right on the edge of it.
Good.
Take him down. Take him down.
Good.
Awesome.
It's a good feeling, isn't it, Rosalind?
It is. It is. We're in the midst of doing a lot of end of year stuff, so
Yes.
I'm trying to make sure I stay on top so I don't fall behind in class.
Right.
Doing everything at school.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Lamb,
Yes, sir.
before you get started, that's what I was going to ask, because there are so many of them that are going ahead and completing the OMA. At what point are you going to just to briefly go over the skip and remind them of some things with that?
Yeah, I want to start on that this weekend.
Look, I'm not even done with the
I'm going to go over it tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't understand. My
they
school is stressful.
Yeah, because I think they need to know that there's not a template for that. They're on their own this time.
Yep. I'm going to go over it again tonight. That's going to be, I'm going to go to that. I'm going to cover case studies and skip tonight.
Okay.
A crucial map.
And make sure that we get that. Okay. All right. I'm going to mute
Rob,
everybody.
what are you in?
Hmm?
What?
Edmund, I'm going to unmute you.
Well, I'm
You're
fine
on.
until you need me for something.
All right. I've got 7 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I see the record is on. Welcome, everybody, to MELS 603. This is sections C6, C8, C10, and C12. I see Dr. Crawford's with us, Dr. Stedman. And I really like, I talked to Dr. Crawford after last week's class. There's Dr. Hamilton. I really like that you buzz in with your questions or carry on side conversations with the other folks. I like that. You can unmute yourself if you want to ask questions, but I like the running chat. I like that. That shows people are engaged, and so that's good. So the first thing I wanted to cover tonight, as always, we always start out with our weekly schedule. This is week 3 on June 5th. Tonight we're going to talk about special populations when we get there. I've got a couple other things, and the discussion board, of course, this week goes along with that. And so I'll be talking about special populations, intervention team students, school-based committees, those kinds of things tonight. Please don't hesitate to ask questions. A lot of you are more versed than I am because you're in it every day. Some of you who are in exceptional children's departments, I try to keep up, but I'll be the first to admit, you have to be in it daily because things change so often and so much. But we're going to cover that tonight. We're going to cover case studies and the expectation on case studies and how that's going to work. But I'm going to start out tonight with the skip. So I am going to go to that. Skip task and prompts. And I'm going to pull this up. And as Dr. Stedman just reminded you, there is no template. You make one just like, or you write it just like you have the others. And so not really a template to use other than it should look like the others. So please make sure that, you can take one of the other formats and do the same thing and put your task and prompts in it. The biggest thing to remember about the skip is where people go wrong with the skip is they get too broad. They try to do too much. They don't read the prompt accurately. You're not trying to solve all the world's problems with the skip. We want you to be very intentional and very specific. We want you to start out with, you'll do a needs assessment to determine gaps in communication between the internal and external communities, basically between the school and the school community, parents, other community partners, other stakeholders. But it's just that. We start with gaps in communication. One of the first things you learn in the business is if you're not communicating with people, don't be surprised if they don't participate, if they don't show up, if they're not involved. They don't know. People are busy. They don't have time to go and look for things. Things have to kind of drop in their lap for them to be cognizant of them. They're not going to say, well, you know, they normally have a fall open house about this time of year. I ought to get online and see if I can figure out when it is. That's not what they do. So we're 95% of the folks that go wrong with this one is they start out with trying to figure out or trying to fix all the problems with parents. That's not your task. Your task is to determine the gaps in communication between the school and the school community. So let's go specifically and read that task in prompt direction. Prompt 1, you'll lead your skip team to conduct a needs assessment to determine gaps in communication. I'd look at advanced ed, and I'd also look at the parent involvement section of the teacher working condition survey. That's a good place to start. And then you can do a survey or you can talk to people, but you don't have to go further than those 2 documents, the advanced ed in South Carolina and the TWC. It usually is good if you do, but you don't have to. You don't have to go further than that. You're looking for gaps in communication. So you can try to find ways through social media and other digital media to fill in those gaps so that people are informed about what you're doing and when you're doing it. And they feel a part or they feel involved. That's what we're doing is we're trying to do that. So we're going to write out a background description of the setting. That's the same thing you did in task 1 of the app cell. A clear statement of the purpose. The purpose of the need assessment is to determine gaps in communication between the internal and external communities. That's it. Don't go any further than that. A list of participants, analysis of the findings, what you find from your TWC, what you find from your advanced ed, what did you find from a survey or from doing a focus group or however how you decide to do your needs assessment. What did you find? A set of recommendations that identifies communication that will be established, and a set of recommendations that includes both short and long-term objectives to establish the skip. All right, now, so let's talk about those last 2 specifically. A set of recommendations that identifies avenues of communication that will be established. We're going to use Twitter. We're going to use Facebook. We're going to use Instagram. We're not going to use any iffy sites now. We're going to use WhatsApp, but we're not going to use any of the questionable social media sites, but we're going to use the ones that are appropriate to use. Let's not be on Grindr or any of that. So let's make sure that we're on the right one now. We're going to use the appropriate social media sites. That's a good idea. We want to do digital media here. And so that's what we're going to look at now. Then we're going to set some long and short-term goals. Your short-term goals should be, we're going to have a Facebook page up and running by August 1st. Put some time to that. This is what we're going to do with our short term. And all those short terms should be about social media, about digital media. And then the long term, once we've got parents hooked, once we're communicating, we're going to do some events with parents. Some of those, let us help you help your child events. Let me say that again slowly. We want to do some of those, let us, as the school, help you as the parent help your child. We're trying to create a partnership here so that parents get the notion that it's just not the school's responsibility to educate their child, that we're partners in this. Let us help you help your child. Family math night, family reading night, maybe you have parents in it and you put something in their hand that they can take home and work with their children. but we know that that's actually, we get much better results for parents who will come to those kind of events and then work with their kids at home, or at least stress it at home, than the parents who come to school and get in everybody's way. Those parents, that doesn't do that. That actually has a negative effect on kids. We want parents to come and fulfill their role, which is to be a partner and come to family math night, family reading night. We don't want them coming in the room and bothering everybody. That's a little value instruction.
And Dr. Lamb, if you're in a school system with a large Hispanic population, ESL night, working, you're working with those special populations there.
One of the, in my career with Gardner Webb, which is now, I'm finishing my 9th year with Gardner Webb. I got old. I'm not as old as Dr. Stedman though, but I got old when I wasn't looking. We've had two successes through the skip that revolutionized the school and community. We've had some good things, but we've had two that revolutionized the school and community. One was at Parkland in Winston-Salem. What Dr. Stedman was just talking about, I had a skip group there, and they put together a night for Hispanic families. Nobody showed up that first night, and then they partnered with a local community organizer and pastor, and he explained that you had to have it on nights when the buses were still running, and monitor the bus schedule. And next thing you know, they had 300 parents out. The next thing you know, they got a hold of that school in a way that you just don't see. And got motivated and activated and got those parents involved and turned that school around. That was the first one. The second one that I saw was at Northwest Guilford. They started doing, the skip team organized, Dinah Birdsey and Lakeisha and a couple of more. I had 4 interns at one time. They did a college day. They partnered with Novant. And they had the freshmen, not the seniors. They had the freshmen come in and visit all the tables, and on each table they had a list of the advanced courses that they would need to take in high school in order to get the right college degree to make this amount of money. And all of a sudden, they became the #1 high school in North Carolina with students taking advanced classes. They got those parents in, and those parents saw what it took, and the parents started taking an active role in the courses that students signed up for, making sure they weren't taking 3 PEs and 1 English. They were taking some advanced courses. So this can revolutionize. And then we've had some smaller scale successes with parent nights of different kinds. But the short term is digital media, social media. Long term is having at least one event where you get parents in for the purpose of academics to help them with their child. Now, it's not awards night. It's not talent show. It's not a ball game. If it were just about getting parents to come to your building, then Independence High School won 10 4A football titles in the decade of the 90s. They would have 40,000 people on their campus on a Friday night. And I said that correctly. They would have 40,000 people. I've never seen anything like it before or since. But it didn't make their test scores go up because they weren't there for anything academic. They were just there to watch a ball game. So we have this mistaken notion that parents coming to school is always a good thing, that we get parents in the classroom. Nope, they're just in the way. They actually make our scores go down. Having parents come for events, well, if it's a ball game, no, that won't help your scores. But if you can get parents out to a parent night where they're involved in academics, you can change the course of your school through that. So that's what we're trying to do here. So your set of recommendations are about digital media. Short term is, when we're going to do what and where and when with social media. Long term is family math night, family reading night, those kinds of things. And then the second half of task 1 is prompt 2. You're going to go to your advanced ed or your TWC, and you're going to look at the school leadership section. Let me say that again. You're going to look at the school leadership, not the teacher leadership. Remember, we looked at teacher leadership when we were talking about empowerment for the APTEL. Now we're shifting gears. We're going to look at the school leadership section of the Teacher Working Conditions Survey. And what we're going to do there is we're going to come up with a set of recommendations that we would give to the school improvement team for improving school leadership based on that public information on the teacher working condition survey and the advanced ed survey. Let me see. Emily has written, absolutely, Emily, that's a great one. We need to talk about that one. Emily's got a great idea here. Can you hold a parent night session to educate students, parents about using technology safely and limiting screen time? Absolutely. Get them not to sit and game all the time. That would be a great parent night, because you're helping them help their child. You're educating them. That's wonderful. That would be a good. I mean, the parent nights, you want to do something with the parent to increase their knowledge or give them some skills or some information to take back and work with the children. That's what you're trying to do. Again, let us help you help your child. It's not about having them come out and watch their child do something or watch their child be taught. This is about involving parents. And then impromptu, as I said, we're going to look at school leadership section of the advanced ed and the teacher working condition survey, and we'll make some recommendations to approve those. So at the end of task 1 of the skip, I should see 3 recommendations. One set of recommendations. Go back here to prompt 1. One set of recommendations that identifies avenues of communication that will be established. The second set is short-term and long-term, what you're going to do. And the third set of recommendations is what you're going to is recommendations for improvement of school leadership for the school improvement plan. And that would be to the school improvement team. So you got 3 different sets of recommendations that come out of task 1. And 90% of the ones that I see that I have to comment, it's not, good start, but is you don't have but 1 set, 2 sets, or 1 or 2 sets. And mostly what they do is forget that we need to have a set of recommendations that establishes avenue, what we're going to do. And then this second set here is short and long term, when we're going to do it. And the third set is what we're going to do to improve school leadership. I need to see 3 sets of recommendations in task 1 from prompts 1 and 2. Then when we get,
if they'll remember, when you're setting up your own template for this, set it up. When you see those bulleted areas, those are your topical areas. Those are your headings. And you know that you got to write something or do something up under every one of them. So that's what we should be seeing.
Mm-hmm. All right. Next thing. You're going to identify what it's going to take to run these three sets of recommendations. Your short and long-term goals is where you're going to go to for these. Probably not going to cost you anything on the recommendations for school leadership. And the first set of recommendations is we're going to use social media. We're going to use Facebook. The short and long-term goals, those are actually action items. Those are things going to cost you time or money or people. And so you need to identify those. Fiscal funding necessary to accomplish the short and long-term objectives. Again, you got 3 sets of recommendations. The middle set's your short and long-term objectives. That's the one you got to identify resources for. The first one and the last one, there's nothing that goes with them. That's just the first one is we're going to use Facebook. The second one is short-term. We're going to use Facebook, and we're going to have to create a website, and it's going to cost this much money, and we're going to have to hire, and it's going to take this much time and this much personnel to run it. And then there are no resources needed for recommendations for improvement of school leadership. So the funding necessary to do this, we're going to have to hire a web developer, or we're going to have to pay a fee to join WhatsApp. I mean, what's it going to cost? And then what's it going to cost ongoing to sustain it? And then we're going to have to identify the people it's going to take. Who can do this? Do we have somebody on site who can establish, is a web builder, or can establish this thing, or can run it? Or are we going to have to farm it out?
And show that in some type of graphic organizer, what you're seeing right there. Just set it up in and organize it.
Just basically what you're going to do, folks, you're going to take the standard graphic organizer and you're going to fill in different sections of it for each of these tasks until you get to the last one. and then you're going to, to the marketing plan, then you're going to fill the whole thing out. It's just different sections of it. So when we get to the marketing plan, it's the same as the action plan, the same as the professional growth plan, statement of the purpose of the plan, strengths, opportunities, involvement, timeline for implementation, feedback. And so this should be the standard graphic organizer. Let me see. Let's see if I've got it in the materials folder. Okay. We've had some problems with these folders, as you folks know. Let me go to materials too. Okay. I am going to upload the graphic organizer example as I see it has fallen out. Again, just a blank one. And again, you should be able to tell when you come up with your recommendations and go to specific activities where to plug those in. And then you're gonna keep on until you're eventually gonna have the whole thing filled out and pass through. You will have the whole thing filled out. The resources, but now on the resources, please remember we want both money and people. So that means dollar signs and names. Staff never did anything. Who, what staff, how much money? I want to see. So under the materials 2 folder right now, I'm going to go ahead and upload that file. Browse my computer. And it better let me. We've been having problems with this, but we'll make it work.
You just gonna send it to me, Dr. Lamb, and I'll put it in.
Yeah, I'm gonna upload it in this one and see if it works. And if it does, I'll put it in my other one, but I'll send it to you.
Okay.
If I can get it to load. We've been having problems with this, as you know. It says it loaded it, but we'll see. All right, so I'm going to send you the graphic organizer example. It will be in materials 2 folder, and of course it looks like this. There you go. Specific activity, that's your recommendations, your timeline when you're going to do it. That's from your goals, persons responsible, resources needed. See the persons, and that's fiscal and human resources. How you're going to assess it. Summative is at the end. Formative is we're going to go check on the adults and make sure they're running these things, that they've got these things scheduled. We check on the web developer to make sure the website's up and running, that they're doing these things. You know, our goal, it should be based on parent involvement, indicator of success, but it also should be based on test scores. Now, I hate to sound crass, but in the end, we're going to all this trouble to try to improve student outcomes. It does no good for us to have parents on campus if our test scores doesn't go up, because sometimes they're just an aggravation in the way. But the payoff for that is if they're actually involved, they're not an aggravation, and they're not in the way if they come for the right reasons. We want to partner with them. But we should see our test scores go up. So our goal should be more parent participation, but it should also be our test scores going up a little. I mean, that's the bottom line here is student outcomes, performance. So this will be in your materials 2 folder to help you with your marketing plan. And so, and I'll send it to Dr. Stedman so that, okay. I'll answer that question here just in a minute. Let me see. Okay. I don't know if you got this.
Dr. Lamb, no need. I got you.
You got me. Discard. All right. All right. So I've got a question on email. Let me go to it. We have STEM, math, and Chromebook night, but we need a reading night. Can we host a family night or local library to have people sign for library cards reading the family? Yes, I think that's a great idea, Amanda. That's a good point. As long as you got parents involved and you're helping them help their child, it doesn't have to physically be at your school. That's a great idea. You can do it at a local library. That would be really good.
And sometimes, especially in low-income areas where they can't get out, they'll go to, there's some family centers or centers and people go to centers and do things.
And that's how we did that. That's how we started at Parkland. We met at places that roamed the bus route and got them there to begin with, and then got them to the school later. But we started out in the community, at different places in Winston-Salem that roamed the bus route. We started out actually at Reverend Jose's church. They would come there, and so we worked our way up till we got them to come to the school. But the important part was they got involved with and their kids saw their involvement and saw that it was important to their parents, and so that's how we got that going. But no, we didn't start at the school at Parkland. We started in the community, and we eventually got to the school. But we started out in the community, so that's a great point, Amanda. Thank you for that. So we've uploaded our graphic organizer, and so that's what you're going to use. Let me pause and get some questions here. Oh, that's a good one. Class Dojo is a good one. We get a lot of those. On the AppTel, we looked at some of the leadership issues in school. Can we say similar things on this one? You know, it's public information, folks. Yeah, in Class Dojo, there's a section called Class Stories. Yeah, that's a really good one. Class Dojo is a really good one to use. Dr. Crawford says he uses it all the time. Anything that connects parents. Yeah, anything that connects the class to parents. I much prefer that to them coming and getting. That's kind of a theme with me, isn't it? Parents sometimes have the best intentions, but sometimes it's more of a distraction, and you get more negative than positive. So you have to be willing to manage that. And sometimes, as you know, in some schools, parents come and their behavior is inappropriate, their dress and their language is inappropriate in schools. So sometimes it's better that they participate virtually than with you. I have a long story on that one that I won't get into tonight, but it's absolutely a true story about a long time ago when we first started in accountability. The very first year, before it was called the state ABCs, it was called performance-based accountability. I was principal in Western North Carolina district, and we had notion, one of our principals, one of our colleagues decided to start a program, suspend mama into school rather than kids out of school to try to help with test scores. That program worked really well in a New England private Catholic school where it was developed because there was all stay-at-home moms. This principal decided to do that in the community where if you didn't work that day, you didn't eat that night. It was a bunch of day laborers. This is where the economy had crashed, furniture had gone under, all the plants had closed. It was really tough economic times. And so the very first mother that came to school that got suspended into school slapped the cafeteria manager when she asked her to put her cigarette out in the cafeteria. They got in a big rough knock and tumble fight and knocked the sneeze guard off the salad bar, and it went from there. And of course the TV was there that day from Asheville to film all this. It was a revolution. So that was the first and last day of suspend mama into school. So sometimes mama's coming to school is not always the best thing. But we welcome parents. We want them to be a part of the process, but it has to be at an appropriate and useful level. Have high active parent population with high expectations. Lots of active learning nights. Can we just redesign an existing one? Yeah. Don't reinvent the wheel. David says they use a remind system to parent. Yeah, I'm not familiar. I've heard of that one, David. I'm just not familiar with it. But yeah, you can work on or redesign one that instead of reinventing the wheel. the actual job fair, the one that we did with Novant in Guilford, they had been having a college fair, but we revisioned how it worked and who the audience was. It had been for like high school seniors. Well, it's too late to affect the courses that they take at that point in their careers. The horse is out of the barn. And so we revisioned it, got partnered with Novant, got those sheets on the desk about higher level courses and salaries of those jobs, and brought freshmen and their parents in after school. So they came in the evening. And so that was a revision. So that's how that worked. So back to our task and prompts here. So basically you're filling out your graphic organizer for your marketing plan. And then, as you know, you reflect on your competencies. You do 12 of them. And here's your grading rubric, as always. What the expectations are. So this one is fairly simple. If you start out knowing what the purpose is, but if you start out trying to get parent involvement, or if you start out trying to figure out what's wrong, or organize a volunteer system, I've seen all kind of things that just got completely out of control. Focus narrowly on what your task is here. Determine gaps in communication. Short and long-term goals. Short-term, address those gaps. Social media, long-term, get parents in, help your child, figure out what's going to cost in terms of people and money, put it together in a plan, then write your competencies. It's really that simple. It really is. The expectation here is on the skip is that you'll spend your time actually pulling off one of these parent events. Not so much time writing it, but more time doing it. Now, you're not required to do one. I mean, you probably can't do one this summer, but we would like to see you develop a program for one of these at some point down the road that you actually have one of these events. That would be great. It's a great learning experience.
Dr. Lamb, with their competencies, they're doing 12 of the 21 in the OMA. Am I correct?
They're doing all 21 this summer.
Like I said, 12. So out of the between the OMA and the skip, all 21 will be addressed.
That's correct.
Okay.
And so, so you got to do. So you need to do your competency folio as well this summer, is what we're telling you. You need to you probably address 12 competencies in the OMA and task 4. You'll do the other 9 here.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah.
But this speaks to, you need to make sure that you get all your artifacts in this summer as well. So you need to make sure you do. See right here it says you're focused on the required 9 not selected in the OMA.
Right.
But there's a note here, you got to do your artifacts this summer as well. But right here's your prompt. So you did 12 in the OMA and you do the other 9 here. That's what it tells you to do right here. So that's your prompt for it. I mean, it could be simpler, but not much. Not much. And so we've pared it down to something doable. So I think this should be fairly self-explanatory. But again, I'm going to highlight where we go wrong is when we do something more than just gaps in communication. We start trying to figure out what's wrong with parent involvement. That's a whole nother bear there. You don't want to tackle that one. We want to start slow. We want to hook them with communication and then do an event. We can't take on the weight of the world here trying to solve the riddle, which is parent involvement for the entire school. That's too big. That scope is too big. We're going to start and try to have a small success, a small success, and then we'll get bigger. That's the idea. All right, I'm going to pause and catch my breath. Does anybody have a question about this, about our task and prompts for the summer, about the skip? It's fairly self-explanatory. All right, let's talk about case studies. So what is the expectation for case studies? So what happens next week when you come online? We'll divide you into 4 groups. Dr. Stedman will have one, I'll have one, Dr. Shepard and Hamilton will have one, Dr. Crawford will have one. And we're going to do breakout rooms, and they'll be able to record, and we'll all be able to record in our rooms. And if you should have, and then we'll do it by section, C6, I'll have the C6. Dr. Hamilton and Dr. Shepard will have the C8. Dr. Stedman will have C10 and Dr. Crawford will have C12. You'll go to your section. You tell us what section you're in, and I'll put you in that breakout room. You should have a 3 or 4 slide PowerPoint that addresses the case study that you have done collaboratively over Zoom with your Zoom group over last week and this coming week. You need to put together a 3 or 4 slide PowerPoint that addresses the questions and the ethical paradigm as well. You answer the question. We want a little slideshow for us, and you'll present that. Now you say, but what if all my team members? If you come, we'll give you extra credit. If you don't, and you just make sure that if you don't have somebody for your team with us next Wednesday night, that you have at least posted so we can share it with everybody that's in that section. If you post them in the assignment Dropbox, if there's nobody here to display it, but if you do come, you get extra credit for coming, which will take a little pressure off of you on getting your points. We'll give you 100 extra points if you show up next week and present. Otherwise, we'll present it for you. If you don't have it, it'll just go to it'll go in for the scoring. But if you want it to be shared with the group, you need to show up next Wednesday. We'll put you in groups, and we'll give you an extra 100 points if you show up for doing your presentation. We'd like for you to have the opportunity to present, so that you're not just always passive learners, that you actively get to participate. So we're going to start doing that next week. You won't have to listen to me so much. So that's the expectation for next week. Everybody comes online. I'll click on the breakout rooms button. When I assign all of us to breakout rooms, professors, you will have the opportunity to record that session. You just hit the record button, and so when I get through with the video at the end of the night, I will have 4 different recordings. I will process those and upload those and send them, and we'll post all those. And you can see what everybody else does. And so we're covering, everybody's doing case 1, but, there's only, 3 or 4 groups in each section, Dr. Stedman? How many groups do we have in each section?
I think I cannot remember your 2 classes, but I think there's only 3, there may be 4 based on the numbers in your class, but three mainly is what we thought.
So we won't have that many, and so, but you'll have the whole hour to present in terms of, you'll have about 15 minutes a group, 15 or 20 minutes a group, and you'll get to talk and discuss and give your point of view and what you think. We'll get a chance to be able to see if we can follow your logic. I think you'll enjoy yourself if you come next week, since you get to be in charge. Does the entire, or you can assign one, whenever how many show up, normally what happens, they just take a slide a piece with it, or one person can narrate the whole thing, or you can take it 1 page at a time. Ever how you want to do it, you got to decide that among yourselves. There's 2 purposes to case studies. One is the actual learning of law and case law, but the second one is to learn how to collaborate virtually. That's why we're doing this. How do you work with people that you aren't in the same room with? Because that's becoming a more and more needed skill. Even schools now are doing a lot of PLC work virtually. You've got to get better at, or learn to and get better at collaborating with people who are not in the same physical space that you are. That's becoming a highly prized skill. Our collaborative partners, which are principals and superintendents, Dr. Hamilton is one of our collaborative partners that comes to our meetings on a regular basis. And she can tell you that superintendents stay on me all the time. Collaboration, they've got to learn to communicate. They've got to learn to collaborate. They've got to be able to do it virtual. I hear that every time we get together, every time we do a Zoom, or every time that we have those folks on campus. You know, these folks, they've got to be able to communicate, and they've got to be able to do to collaborate virtually. Obviously, we got to do conflict resolution and conflict management, but that's a face-to-face skill. What they want you to do is develop your skills, digital skills, so that you don't have to be in the same room with people in order to work with them. So that's why we're doing this. There's easier ways, but it's not the point. Point is one, you learn the case law. We get to follow your logic, your reasoning, but we also give you the opportunity to collaborate and then be able to share that collaboration. That's a very important part of the management piece, is being able to use the technology. Remember, we're doing management this summer, not leadership. We're doing management, and it's more technically oriented. How do you use the technology? And that's what this is all about. How do you use that? All right. So questions about case studies. All right. So this week, you were to interview the chair of your school intervention team. Now, some places call it the care team, some call it SST, some call it IST, some call it RTI. There's all kinds. It's the group that kids are referred to that are having academic or behavioral difficulty. Usually they go into it for up to 90 days, and then sometimes they go into MTSS for another 90 days, or that we call that MTSS, multi-tiered system of support. And then they do their 90 days of anecdotals and interventions, and then a decision is made whether to EC test kids or not. So there's a required 90 days unless parents request it, and that accelerates the process usually. There's a required 90 days once a child has been referred to that for exceptional children or to the intervention team. There's a required 90 days where you do at least 30 days of anecdotals, 30 days of intervention, and then either 30 more days of the same or a new intervention before the testing decision is made. A lot of school districts have now adopted a 90 days prior to that, where they're using response to intervention and other methodology to try to help children, but prior to the standard 90 days. Normally that's called MTSS, multi-tier system of support. Now, and you were to go to an IEP meeting and watch watch who's in charge there and how that works. The EC teacher runs the meeting, but everybody gets a voice. But your exceptional children's program has department chair, has teachers, has compliance technicians, and they take care of the head count and all the paperwork. And there's software now, Easy IAP, that helps them with all those kinds of things. Now, you still need to know what's going on as a principal, and you need to make sure that everything is happening as it's supposed to. But there are other people who are in direct line of responsibility for what happens with exceptional children. However, and this is a big however, and this is the point that you should learn, if nothing else tonight, that intervention team belongs to you. The state of North Carolina, the Department of Public Instruction, whose job is to interpret both school board policy and legislative policy, has deemed through law and policy that the intervention team is what is known as a school-based committee, or SBC. That means the principal is responsible or liable if it goes wrong. If something goes wrong in the EC department, you have people in the EC department who can fix it, but it's their responsibility. Not so with the intervention team. That is your baby, whether you want it or not. Just because the EC people show up at that meeting does not mean that they're responsible. You are responsible as the principal of the building for your intervention team, making sure that you follow the 90 days of MTSS and 90 days of the standard referral system, because once a child is referred, they get the same protections as if they were actually already EC. Now, whatever your district does, you're responsible to make sure that that happens. So in 2014, in August, just prior to school opening, in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, yeah, Dr. Crawford is exactly right. You don't want to visit from these people. So in 2014, in August, just before school opened, 11 elementary principals in Charlotte, Mecklenburg either retired or got sent home, according to how much time they had in, because what was determined by the Office of Civil Rights is that African American males were being tested without going through the 90-day process. And that's why there was a disproportionately number of black males and exceptional children, is because when they came in, instead of putting them through the 90-day process of anecdotals and interventions, they were just testing them right away. And the principal said, we had no idea. Well, that's another reason why we're firing you. You're not doing what we're paying you for. The intervention team belongs to you as a principal. It is a school-based committee. It is your purview. If it gets away from you, then you will lose your job. So you better know what the process is in your district. Do you just have the standard 90-day process, what we call the official 90-day process, or do you have that and a 3-tier intervention system on top of that so that could last another 90 days? What do you have? Whatever it is, I'm not debating the merits of what you have. I'm just telling you, whatever it is, you're responsible to deliver. Period. End of story. There is no but, or there is no except when. No. If they don't get what they're due prior to that EC testing decision, if all their rights haven't been served, it will cost you your job. Those people from OCR have no sense of humor. That's the Office of Civil Rights. They have no sense of humor. Nor should they. There were kids that were being referred one week in CMS and being tested the next. How does that happen? No anecdotals, no interventions, no nothing. That's absolutely happened. And so that's what we're talking about here is you better know what is it your district promises students. Is it just the standard 90-day official process, or are they promising them 3 weeks more, or are they promising them 3 months more? It can go up to 3 months, 90 more days. What is your district promising? And is your school delivering? Knowing that you're responsible to make sure that that's what's delivered. Then you have all the rights. That's why we have you audit all of your special populations. What is it they're supposed to be getting? Are we delivering those things? And that would be your exceptional children, your 504, your limited English proficiency, your gifted, your Title I. Those 5 are the biggies. Are they getting what they're supposed to be getting? When kids are referred to the intervention team, is the intervention team actually serving those kids? Those things are up to you. They are your responsibility to make sure that they're happening. And if they don't, there's not much hope for you if things don't go as they're supposed to be going. If kids are not being served, it will not go well. Dr. Hamilton says principals or APs have to sit in as LEA in every meeting, have a district checklist you have to complete. That's right. What is your district promise? Is it being delivered? That's exactly right. Everybody's district is a little bit different in terms of what they promise folks. Some folks are just doing the 90 required days. Other folks are doing it up to 90 more. I've heard of one district that's going beyond that, doing 180 days prior to the 90. That's a little extreme, but if that's what they feel their kids deserve, that's wonderful. Whatever it is, you better make sure that you're delivering. That's why I like the idea that Dr. Hamilton about. Most districts give you a checklist of these are the things that are supposed to be happening. You better know that they are or not. And so every school has an intervention team. They probably don't meet in high school. They want to portray the notion that we don't do that here. Yes, you do. Every school has to have an intervention team. It may not be as active as the one in elementary schools or in some middle schools, but every high school has to have a place where kids can be referred for academic and behavior difficulties. Even high schools, yes, you have to have one. Usually your special populations coordinator is in charge of that. Most high schools have a special pops coordinator, and that may be the duty of one of your counselors, a social worker, but yes, they're in charge of that. Dr. Shepard, you're with us tonight. You want to weigh in on how you do intervention at North Henderson?
Yeah, sure. We have a team. I mean, like you just said, you have to have one. And so I have a graduation coach, at-risk coordinators, a social worker, a school counselor, an assistant principal that form on a team. And so things are referred to those folks, and depending upon what the issue is, dealt with accordingly.
Okay. When I was a high school principal, we met once a month, but it was just on a business agenda when we held all the other business of the special pops. But we had a special pops meeting once a month, and that was everybody. And we just handled the intervention team as part of that regular monthly meeting. Does that sound?
Yeah, we do the same. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, that's the way I handled it. I had a special pops coordinator, and so as I said, she did EC 5. I mean, she didn't do EC, but she did 504. She did all the titles, Title IX in high school. She did all the titles. She did English as second language. She did intervention. She did all those things. And she was, for lack of a better word, she was kind of our jack of all trades. She did some counseling as well. She was basically our social worker. I mean, everything that we didn't have somebody to do, she did it, and she was really good at it. Sandra Gallman, she's listening out there somewhere. She's an AP at West Charlotte now, I believe. After all these years later, she doesn't look a day older. That makes me mad as fire. Last time I saw her, she still looked like she did 25 years ago. But she was great. But you got to have somebody, and I knew that she was on the ball. But now I showed up those monthly meetings. I can tell you that. I might been doing everything else in the world, but now I showed up for those monthly meetings because
you gotta have that utility hitter. You know, you gotta have somebody who you have on your staff, because you're not going to be able to dedicate that time and bridge a lot of those gaps. But you got to have somebody who's a point person that can bring those people to you, bring those people together, work with it as a team, and notify you when those situations on a bi-weekly or monthly basis, so that you can, be involved in that. But, I have one, Sloan Newberger, her title is a graduation coach, but she's an EC coordinator. She used to be an EC coordinator. She worked with all her at-risk students. She's done ESL. She's done a little bit of everything. And so she runs that for us at North Henderson. And we have a lot of special pops. And so
you absolutely got to have that utility player.
Yeah.
You got to have that person. It's too important just for it to, I'll catch that, here and there. You've got to have somebody that deals with it every day. And you've got to show up to the meetings. Again, you can delegate the activity, but not the responsibility. If it goes wrong, it's back to you. So you better have somebody who's a competent person, but that's somebody that's got their eye on it at all times. People say, well, how do you get those positions? I'd give up most anything except the financial secretary in terms of staff in order to have one of those people.
Yeah, I gave up a teaching position and created it.
Oh, yeah. Well, I said I'd give up most anything except the financial secretary, which you can't give up.
No.
Stand the law. You got to have one of those. Federal law, state law says you have to have one. We covered that in night one of those laws that says you have to have a financial secretary. So other than the ones that you can't give up, I'd give up most anything else to have one of those people. And it's good administrative training. And a lot of folks get in that, like that reason I'm belaboring this point, a lot of you folks out there who want to get into administration, dean of students, facilitators, special pop coordinator is a really good avenue to try to break into administration. If you're having a hard time getting that first AP job, or if you're in a big district where there's a lot of people, this is a good way to do it. Because you can really show your value through working with these special pops. Yeah, and so a good point here on the chat, by 2021, everybody's going to have to be doing MTSS. But right now it's fragmented, anywhere from 90 to 180 days. It's fragmented, but you better find out what it is at your district. And as Dr. Hamilton said, you've got a checklist. Are you doing all these things? Every district has their own checklist. But that's what you were to be working on this week. That's what tonight was about. You know about FERPA, federal privacy laws. Those are really important to make sure that you handle data really really well. And so if we look at our, let me see, make sure here. I've got some documents here. Here's the parent resource handbook. You make sure that parents have that. They probably already got it, but make sure. I've got a slideshow here on inclusion versus mainstreaming. This is going to be relevant when you're preparing one of your case studies, which is about inclusion. This explains the difference between inclusion and just regular exceptional children's program. Here is a long-winded explanation of MTSS and the intervention process. If you don't know what we're talking about, you better read this. It's a full-fledged everything. If you've got all the bells and whistles, I have it written out for you. And then FERPA, this is the link to the Federal Education Privacy Act and about how you have to treat data from students. If you don't know FERPA, you can click on that link and learn. This is from a former student of mine who was the EC coordinator in Winston-Salem Forsyth, and her top 10 hotspots for trouble for exceptional children where you kind of fall off the path. And then I have my top 10, which includes some EC things, and I'll cover my top 10 later because it has other things like discipline in it. But in my top 10, I've got FERPA as number 8. That's how important it is. These are the top 10 most important things in school in terms of school management, not school leadership, school management. First one is no child left behind. Your acts of crime and violence, persistently dangerous, disciplinary reporting. If you get that wrong, you go home. That's Power School. You got to make sure that you can't even generate a suspension form until it's entered into Power School. So that one kind of tops the list. Disciplinary data reporting, prayer, that one has moved up my list. Student dress and publication, search and seizure, zero tolerance policies are not legal. Remember that for this coming week's case study, folks. Zero tolerance is not legal. Abuse, neglect, harassment, that one has moved on to my list, sadly. FERPA's number 8, due process, number 9, and arbitrary and capricious is number 10. These are my top 10 that get you losing your job. Now, these are outside of finance. This is the operations list. You know, if you diddle the money, that's the first thing that'll get you going is if the money's missing. So money is a separate issue into itself. But on the operations side of school, these are the top 10 things that I had to let people go for the most when I was supervising principals. And I hate to say that, but it's just the truth. These are the things that I found that got away from folks through. Sometimes it was just neglect, incompetence, didn't care, didn't think it would come back and get them. But these on the operation side, these are my top 10 things that will get you. Now I have, obviously we've already talked about I have my list of financial things like fundraising and those kinds of things. But on the operation side, this is the top 10 things that will get you. And FERPA is number 8. If you don't safeguard student information, it will cost you. If you don't follow all the intervention processes and do those things, And so these are the ones that'll get you.
You know, Dr. Lamb, we were talking about how important your financial secretary is. Your school data managers are a growing important person too, especially when it comes to disciplinary data.
Absolutely.
You better have a good one and have them well trained.
Yes. Yes. You got to have somebody, because just like this, I'll share this with you to close out tonight. If I can find it here. I had it. I did. I had it pulled up for this reason. Thank you for setting me up, Dr. Shepherd. So in the end, just like with disciplinary data, the importance of having people that you can trust doing intervention team, people that you can trust doing special pops, people you can trust doing your finances, people you can trust doing your data. So here's disciplinary data manual, and this is what it says. All right. Regardless of who determines the data enter or who enters the data, the principal is ultimately responsible. There you go. You can see it in black and white, folks. You better have somebody you can trust. If they get it wrong, it comes back to you. And if you don't report incidents, that's a class 1 misdemeanor. You lose your license, you lose your job. Class 1 misdemeanor if you don't report incidents. If they don't get reported, or if they get misreported or underreported, it's a class 1 misdemeanor. It used to say that in the next sentence, but they took it out because principals complained that it was too threatening. I said, I think you ought to put it in. It should be on everything. That maybe, it would deter some of them from cheating so much on their data. But again, to Dr. Shepherd's point, absolutely. You don't get your data in PowerSchool right, it's not on the data manager, it's on you. So you better make sure you got the right person being your data manager, the right person doing your intervention team, the right person doing your finances, the right person doing your special populations, because those are the things that will get you the quickest on the management side. That's exactly right. All right. I'm going to go as we normally do in a round robin format. Again, next week you won't have to listen to me for so long, but some of this stuff, folks, we just have to, we just have to power through it. I'd like to do so some discussion on planning time. In your materials, there's the list of legal planning time requirements for planning time and those things. It's in your materials folder. If we go back in here and look, I have one here under materials. And again, I'll put the graphic organizer. Legal requirements for planning and instructional time. They're there if you don't know what they are. Okay. And so the chats are going crazy. Okay. 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 All right. Okay. And what about notifying parents for suspension? I was sending home letters. You know what happens to those? No phone call. Is that legal? You're supposed to make all deliberate effort, I believe is the law, to contact parents. A call is expected, by the way. Yes. PowerSchool generates the official notification letter. It is sent and it is mailed. But you are supposed to, make a reasonable attempt to contact parents through phone. Yes, you are. But now that doesn't mean that you have to call them night and day. Usually, I used to make them do two, one during school and one after the APs. Some people just do one. Some people don't require any. So, but yeah, you need to notify them. All right, we'll start with Dr. Hamilton. Dr. Hamilton, what have you got for us tonight in closing?
Well, two things. I would say what we were actually just talking about. Calling on their cell phones, calling on any kind of those contacts that you do have, or emailing if you can't get them. And if you do try to call and you can't reach them, just in your own notes, just jot down LVM, left voice message, date and time, date and time, date and time, date and time. And then if you can't ever get them, then you have that evidence that you really did try. And that will save you a lot of times as well. So that's just
Excellent.
sometimes I feel like I'm spending all my time documenting, but it certainly is well worth it when you need it.
It really is. Documentation is the key. Dr. Crawford, you got anything else? I didn't know you and Miss Morris were such big friends. That would be the odd
for my friends in North Carolina, I want to mention that Emily mentions a new procedure with regard to exceptional children, specifically around getting students classified as SLD. Part of this new checklist now looks at that student that you're looking at's data versus students in the rest of the school. Now, I'll be honest with you, I have a significant problem with that, because if you are in a low-performing school or a school where you've got a bunch of students that are behind, the argument is, well, maybe that student isn't SLD at all, but because his scores are like everybody else's. But what if you transport that student, say, to a school a couple of miles away where the demographics and economics are different? Then that student may very well qualify. So my school is one of the schools that's kind of piloting this. We went through our first test case with a third grade student just this week, just 2 days ago. I don't like it. But again, that's one of those things that as a principal, you got to be aware of what's going on, because it could have significant consequences of getting down to individual students.
Absolutely. And that's what I started with. I'm not a sitting principal anymore. And it changes daily, yearly, weekly. And that's why I love having these sitting principals in here with us that can try to keep up with all these things. There's no way. It is an ever-evolving, moving target, exceptional children, special pops. You've got to know how the game is played, so you better stay on top of it. Thank you, Dr. Crawford. I had heard that, but I was not aware of all the ins and outs of that. I heard that they were going to do some kind of a comparative accountability kind of thing on that.
Please stop before I get more upset. I'm just done with these people right now.
You know how I feel about comparative accountability. I think it's Satan's work, but that's another story.
Yeah.
But
that's it. Thank you.
Only person the child should be compared to is himself. Ever.
That's what I'm saying, right?
Yeah. I can't do comparative accountability is about who you got, not what you do with them. And some kids will always be less than because of that. And that's not what public school is about. Public school is about opportunity. It's about pulling this bootstrapping and giving people the opportunity to change their circumstance. And comparing
the other thing, right? And by that measure, in schools like mine, once again, you're not measuring the kid; you're measuring economics.
That's correct. You're measuring who you get, not what you do with them. And those kids will always lose because they don't come, because of the economic conundrum that they're in.
Right.
That's, I could spend an hour being mad about that one. So
like I said, don't get me started.
Exactly. Dr. Shepard, thank you for your participation tonight. What have you got for us before we go?
Not much more. Going back to what Dr. Hamilton mentioned, documentation. Something that I make use of, and on my administrative team, school counselors, and I don't know, a lot of our teachers who do it as well, is log entries in PowerSchool. I'm not sure if anyone uses those, but as an administrator, using log entries to document conversations with parents or general conversations with students. I have my administrators call anytime we bring somebody down and investigate anything, that even if that student is suspended or not, they pick up the phone call. We call the parents and notify them that we had a conversation with them in our office, and that is logged in an entry in PowerSchool. It takes literally 30 seconds to type that up and pull it up, and it saves you in the long run for sure. It's called log entries if you haven't heard of it.
Thank you. Dr. Stedman, the benediction.
Just very quickly, I hope they've noticed that under each week, under like Zoom session 1, Zoom session 2, there are lots of resources. And Dr. Lamb, I was just thinking, as I was reading all the resources for this week, all of these resources equip you and empower you as you are preparing yourself to begin the interview process, which Dr. Lamb's we've got sessions on that later on. All of this information will empower you as you go in for these interviews. So tonight especially, a lot of the interview questions at some level is going to be about the Exceptional Children's Program. You better know it. So everything that is under Zoom session 3, everything, I looked at every bit of it. I can remember sitting on interviews, conducting the interviews myself at the superintendent's level, and I remember asking a lot of those same questions and seeing just what people knew.
Mm-hmm. You better know what goes on in your district with all these things. Again, it varies from district to district. The rules change. You need to know what is promised in your school district. You need to know what that checklist is. It's different in New Hanover than it is in Guilford and Rutherford. It's just different.
I would encourage them to begin. I would download a lot of this information and start me a notebook or a file, and you need to begin highlighting things, and this will begin preparing you for, whatever your next step's going to be.
Yeah. And it's not like if you learn it one time and memorize it. It's an ever-moving target, folks.
Right.
And so it grows and updates and changes and morphs. And the beauty of being here with Dr. Stedman and I, we have 3 sitting principals that have their thumb on this and know what's going on, and they can share with you what's happening on the day-to-day. And so, again, take advantage of them, asking them questions, being involved with them during class and outside of class. Take advantage of the materials that we provided for you here. Make sure that you understand and know what's going on with your special populations and why we single it out and why it's so important. Because it's important to do the right thing for kids. And so, but it's also important for your career. All right. We will see you all next week. I'm looking forward to your presentation on case studies. Again, if you show up with us and present, you get extra credit. If you're not going to be there, make sure that somebody has uploaded in the assignment Dropbox for case study 1 your presentation. After we get through, you'll be responsible for a half-page reflection about what you learned during the process. But I'm looking forward to next week. I think we're going to have a great time. I appreciate your time and attendance tonight. Professors, thank you for being with us as always. You add so much more than what I do, and so I'm pleased to have you every week and thankful that you're with us. I will see you all next Wednesday. Everybody have a good week.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.